What happened to me shouldn't happen to anyone, but I'm glad it did. At 11, I was a black boy in first class, wearing my Sunday best, proud of my father's achievements. But pride turned to disbelief the moment Karen Ward, the flight attendant, assessed me with derision. "You don't belong here," her tone sliced through the cabin, igniting something deep within me. I calmly replied, "This is my seat," but that only fueled her contempt. As I was forcibly uprooted from my rightful place, I felt the weight of ignorance and prejudice. The other passengers murmured, but their supportive voices drowned in a sea of authority. Isolation curled around me as I found myself in coach, the emergency exit my new vantage point, stripped of dignity and respect. Yet, I knew my father, Nathaniel Carter, a powerful CEO unaware of my plight, would soon change everything. Dialing his number brought a rush of reassurance, just as I could almost feel his presence looming on that plane. When he arrived, it was like a storm breaking. Authority personified, as he confronted the flight crew, piercing through the prejudice that had taken root. To witness the solidarity spark among the passengers, as Mr. Whitmore boldly spoke up in my defense, felt monumental. Nathaniel demanded change, not just for me, but for everyone who'd faced similar injustice. Walking back to seat 2A, I held my head high, greeted by a new attendant, Denise, who saw me not as a child deserving scrutiny, but as a person worth respect. This moment would shift the narrative, and the launch of the Carter Protocol would ensure that no one else would feel the sting of exclusion. As I reflect on that day, I encourage you to think of times you stood by or stood up against the tide. Share your stories. Let's amplify the call for fairness and create a world where dignity is universal. "Excuse me, young man, you can't sit here," Karen Ward said, a sneer etched across her face as she eyed Miles, who was seated comfortably in 2A. "What do you mean? This is my seat," Miles replied, his voice steady despite the tight knot forming in his stomach. "Oh, really?" Karen laughed, a sharp, mocking sound. "We don't just let anyone up here in first class." She turned her back to him, motioning for another flight attendant. "It's not what you think. I'm going to stay right here," Miles insisted, yet doubt flickered in his eyes as the situation escalated. "Just move. You don't belong here," she said, calling with exasperation for backup. "Ricky, can you come help, please?" Watching helplessly, Miles felt the heat rising in his cheeks. "Please, I've got a ticket," he pleaded, but no one was listening. A fellow passenger, Maria, piped up, "Wait, this is unfair. He has a right to sit there just like the rest of us." Galoon shot her a hard stare. "Mind your own business." Elocity felt himself sinking as the weight of added disdain pressed down. The murmurs of the other passengers faded as he was forcibly escorted to coach, the crammed seats amplifying his humiliation. Sitting alone by the emergency exit, he picked up his phone, shaky fingers dialing his dad. "Dad, they're making me move." "Just hold on, Miles, I'm on my way." Nathaniel's voice came through steady and reassuring, a lifeline amid the chaos consuming him. Moments later, the atmosphere shifted dramatically as Nathaniel strode onto the plane, an embodiment of calm authority. He approached the crew, determination etched in his brow. "Can someone explain why my son was removed from his seat?" he asked, voice low but commanding. Commentarios floundered under his gaze, her bravado crumbling. "He wasn't supposed to be in first class," she stammered. The passengers began to murmur their support, Mr. Whitmore standing. "This should never have happened. We don't allow this here." Aisle Nathaniel's presence commanded a respectful hush, and with authority he demanded, "Remove her. We will not tolerate prejudice." As Karen left, Miles returned to 2A, a sense of dignity returning with every step, the new attendant Denise greeting him warmly. In a powerful press conference later, Nathaniel declared, "From now on, the Carter Protocol will ensure that no child ever faces this humiliation again." With their heads held high, Miles and Nathaniel boarded the next flight, hope flickering in the air, each respectful acknowledgement a testament to progress. Miles sat in first class, staring out the airplane window as clouds drifted by like cotton candy. He wore a crisp blue button-up, the kind his dad always told him to wear for special occasions, a reminder of their bond. But today, that reminder felt heavy. Moments passed, anticipation flickering in the air, when suddenly, the sharp voice of Karen Ward sliced through the calm. "Get up, this seat isn't for you," she said, her condescending tone echoing with disdain. Miles felt the heat rise in his chest but held firm. "This is my seat." A whisper of defiance emerged, yet Karen only laughed, rolling her eyes. The other passengers shifted, but no one stood up. His heart raced, and with each second, the feeling of isolation dug deeper. "I'm calling for backup," Karen sneered, her eyes scanning for authority. He glanced sideways. Maria, a passenger who had briefly caught his gaze, opened her mouth, but her words were swallowed by the force of Karen's arrogance. As Miles was escorted to coach, dread settled into his bones. He sat alone by the emergency exit, feeling a cold wave of insignificance wash over him. He dialed his dad, a spark amidst despair. "Miles?" Nathaniel's voice carried reassurance through the line, igniting a flicker of hope. Miles felt seen, valued, each word wrapped around him like armor. But nothing prepared him for the moment he heard the cabin door burst open. His father's presence filled the space with an undeniable authority. A worthy storm was brewing. With each step Nathaniel took towards Karen, the air shifted, and Miles could sense it, the simmering tension, the tide turning. This wasn't just about a seat anymore. It was about something bigger, something unyielding. And Miles was ready to embrace that change. Miles straightened his shoulders, feeling the tension in his chest give way to an unexpected surge of determination. "This is my seat," he said, his voice steady, though his heart raced. The flight attendant, Karen, snorted dismissively. "You're in the wrong class, kid. Come on, move along." Unwilling think shifted within him. He glanced to the side and caught Maria's sympathetic look, a small nod that said, "You're not alone." The brief moment of connection filled him with courage. "I'm not leaving. I deserve to be here just like anyone else," he added, firmer this time. As Karen turned to call for backup, Miles took a deep breath, willing himself to stand tall despite the sinking feeling in his stomach. Just then he pulled out his phone, dialing his dad. "Dad, his voice trembled but steadied at the last word, "I need you." The clarity was liberating. He wasn't powerless. His father's presence meant support and justice. A surge of hope flickered in his chest. Moments later, the plane's atmosphere shifted as Nathaniel stepped aboard. His frame filled the doorway, radiating confidence. "What's going on here?" he inquired with calm authority. Miles watched, heart thrumming, as his father faced the crew. "You will treat my son with respect," he stated, a quiet intensity in his voice. Support erupted from the other passengers, and as Mr. Whitmore chimed in, "No child should be treated this way," a wave of solidarity washed over Miles. Take. Once he was back in his rightful seat, the new attendant, Denise, smiled genuinely. "Welcome back, Miles." The warmth in her voice ignited a spark of joy. In that moment, Miles realized that small victories often pave the way for bigger transformations, and he was ready. Miles sat stiffly in his cramped coach seat, the world outside blurring into a kaleidoscope of clouds. He could hear the muffled whispers around him, but their laughter and snide remarks rang louder than a battle cry. "Look at him," a woman sneered. "First class doesn't suit him." Every word twisted like a knife in his gut, each mocking glance erasing the pride he felt just moments ago. Just when he thought the humiliation couldn't escalate further, a commanding presence permeated the air. Nathaniel Carter stepped onto the plane, his imposing frame cutting through the doubt and disdain swirling in the cabin. The moment he approached the flight crew, an electric charge ignited the atmosphere, throwing light on the fog of injustice that had settled around Miles. His gaze was fierce, probing the suffocating silence with unyielding authority. "Why was my son removed from his seat?" Nathaniel's voice was calm, but it sliced through the air with sharp precision. Karen Ward squared her shoulders, her confidence clipped, as she stammered an explanation riddled with bias and contempt. "He didn't belong there," she muttered, voice tinged with humiliation, as the truth unraveled before the watching passengers. Across the aisle, a man, Mr. Whitmore, rose from his seat, his average stature transformed into a beacon of solidarity. "This isn't right," he shouted, rallying the passengers who began to voice their support, turning murmurs into a chorus of defiance. A ripple of strength ignited, emboldening others to stand against the prejudice woven into the fabric of the situation. "Tage," with a decisive nod, Nathaniel declared, Karen, you're relieved of duty. We will not tolerate treatment based on appearances. As the flight attendant's face flushed with embarrassment, Miles felt the weight lift from his chest, the air crackling with vindication. He strode back to first class, every step resurrecting his dignity. The new attendant, Denise, greeted him warmly, her genuine smile a balm for his wounded spirit. "Welcome back, Miles," she said, respect infused in her voice. Hours later, Nathaniel stood at a podium, announcing the Carter Protocol, a comprehensive initiative against discrimination in air travel. The crowd erupted in applause, echoing the silent triumph that wafted through the cabin where a son had regained not just a seat, but his honor. As they settled into their seats for another flight, miles ahead, the world suddenly seemed brighter, a space where justice triumphed over prejudice, and where a father stood strongly by his son. Take. As I sit by the emergency exit, reflections flood my mind. I remember the feeling of being yanked from my place, my rightful place, by someone who saw my skin and not my significance. It stung, knowing that all my hard work could still fall victim to prejudice. But when my dad walked in, armed with a calm authority, everything shifted. It reminded me of my worth and the importance of speaking up, not only for myself, but for others like me. Standing up for justice can feel daunting. I learned that fighting against bias builds resilience. And while I can never erase what happened that day, I can choose how to respond. I realize we're all human, shaped by our experiences, and it's these moments that define us. Do you think I went too far? What would you have done? Have you ever had someone treat you like that? I invite you to share your thoughts and experiences in the comments. Together, let's keep the conversation going about fairness and justice. Like, share, and subscribe for more stories that matter.